Hi everyone, I'm Seulgi, and as you probably figured out from my dimly colored clothing, I'm from North Korea. It took me a lot of courage to tell you about my life story, so please like it and write any comments you want. I don't think I'll get a chance to tell you about myself again.
What are you digging for? When will dinner be ready already?
Shouted my mother while I was cooking in the yard of our house. We have a great economy of electricity in our country, and for that reason, we do many household chores with fire and everything by hand. My mom wasn't always like that, though a little bit. I remember that she used to be very kind and loving until I killed my father. You didn't hear that. If there's the worst child in the world, then here it is, in front of you. My carefree childhood didn't last long. Just a few years. My father was a laborer, and my mother did the housework because she babysat me. I was born with white skin and a beautiful face. I was called the prettiest girl in the village. Daddy often called me a princess, too. In spite of a hard life and hunger, we still lived happily. But one day, there was hunger in the house. My father lost his job. He looked here and there every day, but it was all for nothing. I got sick and needed food. Out of desperation, my dad tearfully kissed my forehead and said he was going out to get some. He came home 3 or 4 hours later with a bag full of food. I couldn't even open my eyes from hunger. As soon as we ate, the military came to our house. They accused my father of stealing and executed him. Mom and I never got over the tragedy. My mother hated me. She began to call me a murderer, and then she said that I was ugly, that I had ugly, pale skin that reminded her of that day. To make her feel better, I tried to smear myself with mud to look unkempt. Then she stopped scolding me and just ignored me. I had to survive on something. At night, when there was a blackout in the houses, I would run to my neighbor, the wife of an important man with the rank of colonel, and spin a device in the shape of a bicycle. You spin the pedals and electricity comes into the house. It was hard, spending hours spinning until they could watch TV, but still, I did it for the food. I got paid in groceries and fed my disgruntled mother in the morning. We lived in a village in the demilitarized zone, next to South Korea. More often than not, military families who served in the DMZ lived there. My mother always humiliated me in front of my neighbors. The kids laughed, and no one wanted to play with me. Years passed, and I grew up to 18 years old. I worked at the market during the day and peddled at my neighbors in the evenings. Over all these years, my legs developed swollen veins, but still I continued to do it, to provide for my mother. She never talked to me normally, by the way, and I never stopped smearing myself with mud so as not to piss her off. One night, my mother and I went to a neighbor's house together, my mother for tea and me for my part-time job. She had her son, a little older than me, with her. His name was Chi Min. He had come from overseas after his studies to follow in his father's footsteps to serve in the army. He is incredibly handsome, tall and well-built, and of course, I didn't count on anything. A neighbor introduced us, and I immediately sat down to peddle. My mother sighed after hearing the praise from our neighbor and said, "You're lucky to have such a son. The only thing my daughter knows how to do is to disgrace." Her words stabbed me in the back. I peddled on and tried not to show any tears. At night, lying on the floor of my house, I made a decision that changed my fate. In the morning, I went to my mother and said, "Mom, I'm going into the army." In our country, men serve 10 years and women 7. I wanted to do at least a little to make my mother stop being so ashamed of me. I knew it wouldn't wash away the fact that my father had died because of me, but I couldn't live without doing anything. I wanted to try. My mother squinted at me and said, "You come back in shame. I'm not your mother anymore." For the first few years, I didn't go home at all. Order and discipline were very strict. It was hard to serve women in the army because we did all the dirty work. but I didn't complain. I did my job silently and became one of the best. Finally, I washed off the dirt, and my porcelain-skinned face was seen by the whole army. I was called a local beauty, thought to be the daughter of a wealthy family. In time, I managed to get the rank of sergeant, and I commanded the privates. After one of the general formations, I saw Chi-min. Of course, he didn't remember me, but I remembered him very well. We started bumping into each other at dinner time, during exercises, and during general cleanup. He was the same rank as me. When I met him, I pretended I was seeing him for the first time, and we just kind of spun into a conversation on our own. Chi-min used to bring me shampoo, soap, and tea to my barracks at night so no one would see. He said it was from him, as a friend. I collected all these items and brought them home to my mother for her first furlough. Everyone in the village looked at me with admiration, said compliments, and looked at my shoulder straps. Only my mother glanced furtively at the presents and didn't say a word. I left 2 hours later. On arrival at the unit, I went straight to my room. It was nighttime, and I was walking by when I overheard 2 lieutenants talking. These jerks were discussing my appearance. When they started talking nastiness, I wanted to punch them, but the conversation got interesting.
Wasn't it her father was executed for theft? They say he stole money or groceries. Yes, I heard that too. I wonder why he did it. He was a decent man. Also heard that our mother thinks she's a disgrace to the family because she was the reason her father was executed.
I clenched my fists, but Chi-min came up behind me. I was frightened. I wanted to hit him out of inertia, but Min pulled me toward him so the lieutenants couldn't see. I fell right on top of him, and we froze. The lieutenants walked over to the bushes where we were lying, and then someone called out to them, and they left.
It was the most awkward moment. I quickly got up and slapped him on the shoulder.
Why did you stop me?
No point. You'll get punished for their gossip. Did you go home?
How do you know where I was?
Even though you didn't tell me, I've known who you are and where you're from for a long time. Being clean suits you.
So you do remember me, huh? He was embarrassed.
I'm here on business. I found out something about your father. He didn't steal the food. He earned the money honestly, but he was framed and executed as a diversion.
What did you say? The information shocked me. I almost cried, but Chi-min wiped away my tears and said he would help me find out the truth. On Min's tip, I decided to grease the senior lieutenant. In the days that followed, I brought him coffee, food, and tea. Then I brought him drinks. When the officer was intoxicated, he asked me an unexpected question.
And you and Chi-min, do you have anything?
I didn't say anything.
You can't go out with him anyway. You know that, right?
What do you mean?
All I'm saying is that you're going to hate him.
He passed out then on the spot, and I never got to ask another question. The next day, I got the news that my mother was sick. I took an emergency day off and headed home. Chi-min's mom, our neighbor, came over to express her sympathy.
How's your mom?
Thanks, the fever's gone. She's asleep.
That's good. There's nothing like it when kids take care of you. You're a good girl. Your mom must be proud of you. And how is my son?
We were chatting on the way as I was seeing her off and chatting about Min. Suddenly, her husband, the colonel, appeared at the gate. I saluted and he nodded his head. Afterward, I went off to my room. Strangely enough, I hadn't seen him since my father was executed. Min looks like him in some way. After my mother got better, I went back to work. In the middle of the night, I wanted to go for a walk outside the barracks, but Senior Lieutenant Ari followed me. He was acting strange, drunk again, starting to get handsy. I'm afraid you misunderstood me. Those gifts were not a sign that I liked you.
What did you say? Who the hell are you to turn me down? I'm a senior lieutenant, a junior officer, and you're a sergeant.
Suddenly, he slapped me on the cheek. I automatically covered my face with my hands, but then Chi-min came out of nowhere and punched him so that he fell over.
Oh, you bastard! Hey, Seulgi, his father's the reason yours died. You know that? Watch your mouth. Rank doesn't give you the right to insult my father's honor.
What does he mean?
Ask him. He already knows. I'm off. Good luck, you two lovebirds.
What? What's going on? Chimin said that his father had received a large bribe from South Korean scouts and that certain people found out. There was nothing left for his father to do. He saw my father at the market and he begged for help, saying that his daughter was sick and needed food. Min's father gave him money and said he could work it off later. In his joy, Dad bought food and brought it into the house, but the military noticed it. I couldn't stop my tears. So your father set mine up. He paid for it with his life.
I know. I only found out today. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Don't touch me. Don't touch me. I hate you. I started ignoring Chimin. Just thinking about him hurt me because I was already in love with him up to my neck. 2 weeks later, I got an assignment to wash the captain's car. I went to the river to wash it, but there was no water in the unit. The car was stolen while I was washing my hands. I got really scared, so I looked around and Chimin came out of nowhere again. He started to help me, but they couldn't find the car. When we got back to the base, Chimin took the blame. I didn't even have time to say anything. It turned out later that Senior Lieutenant Ari had tried. Chimin was punished badly, even though they found the car intact later. Min was kicked in the back by his supervisor and ended up in the infirmary. I went to see him, and that's how we made up. Why did you do that for me?
I like you.
His answer was plain and simple. I kissed him, and he apologized again for his father. A week later, it was our D-Mob. I was graduating from the army. During the ceremony, a neighbor, a colonel, came out, started to speak, and then everyone was called to the banquet. He came up to me and said that my father would be proud of me. You are not worthy to say his name. You know why. He was confused. His eyes flickered and his colleagues looked in his direction questioningly. The colonel took me away, and I told him I knew everything and that I would never forgive him. The neighbor wanted to make excuses, but Min interrupted him.
Father, don't.
Chimin came with me to my mother and told me everything. It was hard to accept. Thanks to Min, though, we learned the truth. My mother apologized to me, but it's not over yet, I'm sure. Tell me, guys, did you like my story? Write your opinion about it in the comments below the video. Don't forget to like it, share the video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel.